Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Music for Your Heart. Okay, so basically that's our first video to explain how music goes on, how you can understand it better. Okay, I know that I'm not the best in this area, but at least I know some concepts. Okay, and before we get started, I want to say that we all have been there. What I mean, for example, I started liking music. I wanted to compose something that stands out, or I want to compose something in general as a beginner. So I thought that I would open just the app and play some random things. Then, voila, I will be able to understand everything. Okay, but it didn't go like that. So I needed to read a lot. I needed to understand what is going on. Okay, and since I still know how I started, so I wanted to pass this knowledge out, and maybe it would be helpful for some of you. So let's get started. So for today, I will explain the basics of mm, uh, the the music theory. Okay, so I assume that you understand how FL Studio works. And we're just like moving from point to another point. And I know that some people think, oh, wow, why would I need to learn music theory? Actually, some people don't need it, but it will be that point at which they have to learn the music theory because simply music theory is the language. It's like the language of music. Okay, so you can't learn any language without knowing at least the basics. So let's get started. Okay, we're gonna start with the basics. Okay, we're gonna avoid the complicated terminology. So just to make it easier to be understood. Um, the first thing that I would like to say, okay, so that's like the piano roll. Okay, so we get those notes. Okay, so we're gonna go step by step. So the first thing, you can notice here that we have the C5 here and we have also C6. Okay, so the distance between C5 and C6, we call it octave. Okay, and we have multiple octaves. Okay, we have from C4 to C5, that's an octave. We have from C5 to C6, that's another octave. Okay, so what is the difference between each octave? So octave, simply, it's like it contains the same notes. Okay, for example, we are talking about the octave 5, okay, or the fifth octave. So it contains the same notes as octave 4. Okay, so what is the difference? The difference simply is like the frequency of each note when it's being played in octave and another octave. Okay, so for example, just try to pay attention. So that's C5 in the fifth octave. Okay, that's C6 or the C note in the sixth octave. Okay, so that's simply what is like the difference. So that's like that distance is octave. So how many notes we have in each octave? We have the first one, okay, and second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th. Okay, so we have 12 notes. We have 12 notes, I'm sorry, per octave. Okay, so the name of each note would be as follows. So we're starting from C because like that's the most note that is played, and we have C and C sharp. So what is C sharp? C sharp basically is that like black key, okay? Or when we have any black key, we call it sharp, okay? And it takes the name of the previous note, okay? So that's C. and this one is C sharp, okay, and so on. And we have D, D sharp, E, F, because we don't have any black notes here, and G, 5, G sharp, A sharp, B, and we goes to C in the next what octave, okay? So those are like the notes per octave, but the music theory doesn't go like that. So we don't expect that when we play some random notes and we just wait until we get anything that sounds great. No, it doesn't go like that. So we have some basics, okay? And I'm gonna start teaching or just explaining some basics about the music theory, but on FL Studio. Why? Because when you usually see a lot of people explaining the music theory, it would be on some instruments, okay? So, but this one, it would be easier for people who would like to produce music. So let's raise everything here. So what is the basic thing to learn here? The first thing is called chords, okay? Chords. So what is chords? Okay, a chord is basically like it's multiple notes, okay, that can be played together or after one after the other, okay, because it gives us like the basic harmony, okay. So that's the first thing that we need to learn here. So for example, we have the first one that we'd be learning right now, the C chord, okay. So the C chord, we have two types of chords, C chord major and C chord minor. So we call it C major and C minor. Okay, what is the difference? I will explain. So the first one, that's the first note in the C major chord. Okay, so the first one, when we say C major chord, okay, so C is the root note. So that's the first note that has to be played. Okay, what is the second note? Okay, we count one, two, three, and the fourth one. So that's the second note, and we don't call it the second note. We call it like that's the root note and the third. We call it the third. Okay, okay, and we count after the third. We count one, two, three. Okay, and that's the fourth. I'm sorry, the fifth. I'm sorry, that's the fifth. Okay, so C E, G, that's the C major chord. Okay, so let's listen to it. Okay, so that's like the basic thing that can give us some harmony. Okay, so that's like the C major chord. So the first one, okay, then we count four, one, two, three, four, and that's the second one. Then one, two, three. Okay, so that's how we can compose or like just draw or play C major chord. Okay, okay. So we can play that chord in another octave. Okay, so for example, that's how it sounds here in this octave, and we can just select and we're gonna play the same chord but in another octave. Okay, so it would sound like this. Okay, so let's get it back to the first octave. So that's the first chord. Okay, so that's what C major chord. Okay, so how many chords we have? We have chords for each note. Okay, so we have C major chord. Okay, so it's like that. And let's say we have D major chord. Okay, so the same thing that we did to compose the C major chord, we're gonna do it with the D major chord. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and 1, 2, 3. The root note, and the third, and the fifth. Okay, okay. So those are like the basic types of chords. Okay, we have like some chords, we call it extended chords. Okay, we have other notes. Okay, but let's just take to the very basic thing. Okay, another chord to be drawn. Okay, so let's take the C sharp chord. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. That's the C sharp major chord. Okay, C sharp major. Okay, we have D sharp as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And so on. Okay, so with each note we have, like, let's say one basic chord. Okay, we have many chords for each note, but let's say right now we have just one simple chord for each note. Okay, so that's like the major chord, how you can write major chords. Okay, so a tiny hint, octave is not just between the C5 and the C6 or the C4 and the C5. No, it's between any note, okay, and the other one, the next octave. Okay, so that's D4 and D5, so that's an octave. Okay, um, E4 and E5, so that's another octave. So any number of keys between the one note and the same note in the next octave, so that's like a complete octave. Okay, so now we can play the major types of chords. Okay, what about the minor? Okay, so let's take the simple C minor chord. So C, so the root note is C. Then we count 1, 2, 3. Just 1, 2, 3, not 4. Okay. Then we count 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's the minor chord. Okay. So you might have noticed that we have the same root note. Okay, and the same fifth. Okay. So those are like between the major and the minor chords. Okay, for the same note. Okay, what is the difference? This, the note in the middle. Okay, so in the major chord we have this note in here. Okay, but in the minor note we have this note here. Okay, so just the middle note in the minor chord is one note below. Okay, the major note, the major chord. I'm sorry. Okay. As we did with the major chord, we can play minor chords for each note. Okay, so that's like the minor chord for the C. So that's C minor chord. Let's take for example D. So D, the first one. 1, 2, 3. That's the third, or that's like the second note, but we call it the third. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that's the fifth. Okay, that's how it sounds like. So, and so on. You can play any minor or major chord for any note. Um, and that's all about it. To understand like the basics of chords, okay, you can build any chord for any note, as I said. And another thing that I would like to make it clear, we have two things. We have, for example, C major chord. That's what I have already shown you. Okay? And we have C major key or C major interval or scale. Okay, what does it mean? That's something totally different. So we have the chord as I have shown, and we have the key or the scale. So that's something totally different. And I don't say the key, so I mean this key. No, no, no. That's something related to another thing about how you can play music in a harmonic way. But we're gonna explain that later. Now I'm gonna explain to you how you can draw something called chord progression. Chord progression is basically when you play a chord after another chord and so on. You build many chords together next to each other, so we call it chord progression. Okay? So for example, we're gonna take this one. The first one is C major chord. The second one is D minor chord. Okay, we're gonna play major chords and minor chords together. This one is E minor chord, F major chord, G major chord, and A minor chord. Okay, let's listen to it, how it sounds like. Alright, so I know that you think it's so basic and it doesn't give us like the harmony needed or like the melody needed, but again, that's the very basic concept of chord progressions or chord in general. We can use those chords in many different ways, and we don't play them in this basic way. But again, we're just explaining the concepts in the upcoming videos. In the next videos, I'm gonna show you how you can use them in a better way. I will explain many things related to, as I mentioned, what is the difference between the major chord and major key, and so on. Okay, and after we explain everything related to the music theory, we're gonna use them. We're gonna apply this theory in tracks and how we can use every concept we learn together in order to get something beneficial or order to get something cool. So as I told you, it sounds so basic, but if you try to use it in a different way, for example, in with a different instrument, it might sound better. So let's take this one, for example. That's the same chord progression, but we are using it with different instruments. So try to listen to it. Right, so you don't just put some notes and you expect that you will get something really amazing. So you need to put some effects, you need to put a lot of work, a lot of effort in order to get something that you are imagining. And but I know that it's just the beginning, okay? So, but I will try my best to explain everything in detail. I'll try my best to get everything as clear as possible. So that was everything in this video. In the next video, we're gonna explain more about chords, more about the music theory. So if you want anything, please write in the comments, and If there is something that you don't really get, please write this in the comment, leave some feedback. And as I told you, I assume that you understand the main concepts of FL Studio. But if you want me to explain or to create a video, explain everything detail related to FL Studio, how you can use it, please write that in the comment.